Hi, I'm Jill. Welcome to the Homeschool for Real Life podcast. This is part of our summer learning series. We're doing 3 videos that share with you fun ideas to keep the learning going during summer. Because it's great in summer when we stop our regular routine. We're not doing all of the serious school things that we typically do. But I like to keep the learning going. For one thing, it just kind of enriches everybody's days. It gives us some fun things to do, and it's great because they're still learning. I can record those hours toward our homeschool time, kind of giving us a boost to start the year with, and I'm glad to see them enjoying learning all through the summer months in a relaxed and fun way. So this video is where I share some ideas for you about how to do some math learning in the summer. Now this is going to be different for older kids and younger kids, but you can kind of take the ideas and make them work for you. So the first one is really simple, Sidewalk Chalk. Sidewalk Chalk is a great way to do math. You can practice math facts that way. You can draw number lines outside. You can have them do skip counting, counting forward, counting backward, all sorts of things that you can do with Sidewalk Chalk and math. If you just think about it a little bit, have them hop on the numbers, there's a whole lot you can do outside. You can even throw bean bags and then solve the equations the bean bags land on. All sorts of things. So keep your Sidewalk Chalk in mind, get outside, do some fun math that way. The next one is baby pool fishing. So if you have a baby pool or a bin or even a real pool, you can put numbers on some things that you're tossing in there. These can be like things that are made to toss in the pool. They can be ping pong balls. They can be bottle caps. If you're cheap like me, you can just save your bottle caps and use those and write on them. But just like the Sidewalk Chalk, this can be used in so many ways. You can put up equations, spots for them to put those. So if you are doing addition equations, subtraction, you can just pop those numbers in, right? So you get 2 of them and you add them. Or you can change things up by putting one at the beginning of the addition equation, one for the end, and then you've got this plus what equals that. And so they're thinking about it in different ways. So you can do any sort of operation with numbers that you're pulling out of there, some random practice, and then you can also do all sorts of other things. So maybe you could make it where you pull out a number and that tells you the number of sides in a shape, and then they have to run and find something with a shape that has that number of sides. So you're practicing geometry. If you just take a little time and think, you can get creative and do a lot of math with baby pool fishing. So you can just get a couple of like nets from the pet store for scooping out fish and do it that way. And especially little kids. I think that's a whole lot of fun. But for your big kids, you can do it where you've got the things that sink in the pool, the diving things, and they can dive down and get them, and then they've got to do the math when they come up. Or maybe you make them stay underwater until they have the answer. Just kidding. Don't do that. Another idea for you is a measuring tape scavenger hunt. So you can make the scavenger hunt. You can have your kids make them for each other. But there's something to find at the end, a prize that's going to be there. And so your scavenger hunt, they can set off with their measuring tape. Maybe you tell them to go 7 meters forward out the front door, and then turn 90 degrees to the right. Go forward 6 feet, right? You get the idea. And so they're following your directions, they're practicing measurement, and they're going to find something fun at the end. Even little kids will enjoy this. They just obviously will need some assistance. Another way to do some measuring is to observe shadows outside. Have you ever noticed how much your shadow changes during the day? The summer days are so long, so if you go out early in the morning, your shadow is really long because the sun is at a steep angle there. But the closer it gets to noon, the shorter and shorter your shadow gets. And then as we go toward evening, your shadow gets longer and longer and longer, but in the opposite direction. So if you mark one spot to stand, you can have someone trace your own shadow, or you can take out something with you some sort of tall toy or something like that, and trace its shadow, measure its shadow. So you can record the measurements of the shadow as the day goes on. Look at the pattern in a graph. If you make a line graph showing your measurements over time and connect the dots, you can see the change in the shadow. You can also talk about angles and maybe even use some math to figure out the angle the sun is at if you've got older kids. So just looking at shadows can be a really good way to do a lot of math and then also make your kids aware of how these things are changing during the day and what that means. And then you could look at sundials too if you'd like and connect that with those cultures that used to use those to know what time it is. Another fun one, we always like to do math in the kitchen, right? Math in the kitchen is always delicious. And so the summer is a great time for smoothies and popsicles. They're going to be doing some measurement, maybe even some fractions when you do this. You can have them find a recipe, like we have this Fun Stuff Frozen Pops book which has all sorts of really fun and delicious popsicles to make. You can also have them design their own recipes. We do a lot with frozen fruits and yogurt and things like that. So we just have these simple popsicle makers. They're really easy to fill. We just run some water over them to loosen them up and they pop right out. So these are the kind that we use. They work great. No complaints. So have some fun finding and designing fun popsicle recipes. And if they design their own recipes, they can write them down, and that's writing. A really interesting thing you could have your kids do during the summer is to find a lot of different kinds of flowers and have them count the petals. See if they can find a pattern. See if they see repetition in the number of petals that flowers have, because there actually is a pattern to many flowers. And I have a link I'll include for this where you can learn more about it. But have your kids write them down, make a line plot maybe, where they're doing their X's where they find flower with that number of petals, and see what pattern they discover, and then check out that link to learn more about it. It's really fascinating. Another way to do some math with nature is to gather some objects outside. Maybe you're picking up nuts outside, or it could be flowers, although they have to be, maybe you can use dandelions, so you're okay with picking the flowers. But you can find stones, flowers, sticks, whatever it is that your child enjoys finding outside, and then make some mathematical sentences with those. If you have a little child, you can have them make 2 groups. Count how many in each group. A really little child can just count how many. Stepping it up, you can have them do some addition where they put the 2 groups together and find out how many all together. If you have a child who's a little bit older, you can make arrays. See if they can divide them evenly into rows. And then they can make a fact family, multiplication and division fact family with the 4 facts that would go with that one array. This is a great visual way to practice your multiplication facts. You can also do fractions. If you collect a group of objects and a certain number of them, maybe you find a bunch of nuts and some of them are beech nuts and some of them are acorns, you can find the fraction that are acorns. So all sorts of ways to do math outside with nature. If it gets too hot outside and you want to cool off, go to the grocery store. I'm always freezing in the grocery store in the summer, so if you're hot, it's a great place to go. And you can do plenty of math there. If you want to really motivate your kids, you can give them a certain amount of money and then let them go to the grocery store and find, what can I buy with that amount of money? What can I pick out? What's on sale? What's the sale price? They can do a lot of math and get the most bang for their buck, figure out what they'd like to purchase at the store with that amount that you've given them. You can also, this isn't math, but you can also take a world map to the grocery store and look and see where different foods come from and mark those places on your map or point them out on your map or globe. And this can be really amazing to show kids where their food is coming from. Some of it travels quite a long way. You can also do that at a clothing store. and brings up some interesting conversations on standard of living and even child labor laws if you want to look into that. Heading back outside again, if you grow a garden, you could do some graphs of your garden. You could graph how many tomatoes are on the plant or how long the cucumbers are. You could measure that and graph that. So all sorts of things that you could put in a garden graph. And then finally, summer is a great time to investigate measures of capacity. The best way to learn about capacity, where you're measuring in teaspoons, tablespoons, cups, gallons, pints, liters, is to try it out. You want them actually holding containers of the different sizes, using one to scoop water into the other one and seeing how many times they have to scoop. So how many of these pints fit into that gallon? How many of the cups fit in the pint? How many teaspoons fit in the tablespoon? And so taking them outside with a bin of water, or if you have a pool, they can do it in the pool. It's a great way for kids to get familiar with those measurements of capacity and how big they are, and then to see how they relate. When they discover it themselves and spend time investigating, that really gets it into their heads and they understand it better. So those are some fun ways to continue your mathematical learning through the summer. And then just like the other videos, this one has a bonus idea. So this isn't necessarily math, but it is another way to keep the learning going through the summer. You can set up a learning tent. So this can be a regular tent that you have that you set up in the backyard, and kids can go in there and read and draw and write and do all sorts of learning activities. They can play games in there. If you don't have a regular tent, you can just set up like a blanket or pillow fort and do it that way. Or you can also use PVC and build a frame that way and put your sheets over it and make a tent that way. So a tent makes everything more fun. So try that out for a new space for learning during these nice summer months. I hope you've enjoyed this. Make sure you check out our other 2 videos about summer learning. If you liked it, be sure to click like, subscribe, check us out on Facebook, and visit us at h4rl.com.